Crackheads, it's Friday. That can only mean one thing. It's the Crack with Petesy Carroll. How are you, everybody? Are you having a fantastic day? I hope you are. Well, it's a bit of an old dry one this weekend for the MMA people, let's be honest. We don't have a whole host of fights going down, not even an old Apex event to tickle your fancy. But let me tell you, there's still plenty of things to talk about, crackheads. We know you're fiending, and I'm about to deliver that sweet injection of MMA cheddar to you. Well, let me tell you, it's been a long week, back from Belfast. I became a boxing journalist last week. I don't know if you saw me. I was all over the broadcast. Pretty big deal. Now I'm back to the MMA beat, and as I just said, not a lot going on, but we do have things to talk about. Our beautiful fan base and media and everyone has given us a beautiful reactionary week on the back of Jean Silva's loss. Oh, it's the end of the fighting, nerds are saying. And thank you so much, because we use that as our thumbnail this week. Shout out Owen. Yes, we will discuss the fighting nerds. Have they, in fact, fallen? And have we saw similar things like this before? I can think of a few gyms off the top of my head where we certainly were eulogizing them long before they were actually finished. We also need to talk about Raja Jackson, who has been arrested as of yesterday. And we will also speak about the Eubank-Benn press conference. A lot of heated moments, as expected, there yesterday. We have that and much more to speak about, but I'm glad to tell you we are joined by the dream team. I mean, this is becoming a regular thing again. It's very exciting. Chuck Mindenhall and Ben Fowlkes are here. Chuck Mindenhall, let's start with you, sir. How are you today?
I'm well, Petesy. Just kind of basking in that big Thursday night football. Did you stay up for it?
Yeah, I was actually, funnily enough, we don't have on air Jordan today. New York Rick is here, but due to his contract with Boys in the Back, he cannot speak or cannot appear. The legal team will be all over that. We're breaking off. It's becoming very like the Monday Night Wars around here. WCW, ECW. We're all different factions now. We hate each other, but he is here to do the job, and I respect him for that. Also, we don't have Oscar Losev. We have the great mysterious Frank, who's here, who also will not speak or appear on the show due to his legal situation with Boys in the Back, which is perfectly fine. Which brings me back to the first question, which was Thursday Night Football. Chuck, I can't do it anymore. This is breaking me down. My body has finally given up. Today, I felt like a piece of shit that was scraped off someone's shoe. I went for a run to try and energize myself. It did not work. I'm holding on here, but I think... And I don't want you and Ben to tell me what I should do here. I'm thinking about boycotting Monday Night Football and Thursday Night Football.
Wait, Monday night too? What about Sunday night?
No.
I think you got to do the Sunday night game. But the Thursday night game, of course, you could skip that. And the Monday night games, there's no real reason to watch that either. But you gotta watch the Sun. Isn't that like the showcase event of the week for football? You got to watch that one.
Yeah. I mean, Ben, what do you think? Would you think less of me if I just stop watching Monday and Thursday nights?
It wouldn't be possible for me to think less of you, Pete. I'll say this. I do find it hilarious that Petesy is now talking about watching Thursday night football the same way the players talk about playing in Thursday night football, where they get the short week, the bodies are all beat up, and they're just like, you're shortening our careers. We can't keep doing this. And that's how Petesy feels about staying up to watch it on TV. Also, did anybody else hear him claim that he went for a run and went, did you though?
I did. It wasn't good. A very slow one as well, because I was just like, I need to try and do something with myself. Look, it got me here. So I mean, I'm happy I did it in the end, but I'm still sweating profusely, and I went like 4 hours ago, which is probably a sign I probably need to go to the doctor. But nevertheless,
when you watch the games on Sunday, like the normal, the early game, the afternoon game, as we think of it here, what time is that for you?
6 p.m. is the first one, then 9, then the last game is 1:15 or whatever. And
okay. I would support you just being a 6 p.m. and a 9 p.m. guy, because that's basically our afternoon games are your Sunday night football. That's fine. You can get by. They put together all kinds of highlights for specific teams you want to follow and everything. I give you permission as an American, as a red-blooded American who grew up playing lots and lots of football. I say you go for it, Petesy. We're we're pleased as hell that there's anybody outside of this country who cares about American football.
This from the guy who's in the real time zone, the one real time zone, 11 a.m. and 2 p.m. Right, Ben? Those are the only kickoff times.
It's perfect.
Oh, wow.
It's. I don't know if you've ever. I had the experience once where I was vacationing in Hawaii and turning on the TV in the morning and there's the football on and you're just like, whoa, it never occurred to me that other people were watching football at a different hour of the day. And it's wild. It's amazing to me, Petesy, that you've lasted on the NFL train as long as you have. So do it however you need to do it, man.
Well,
proud of you. I'm proud of you.
It's just I'm aging so much because I used to get shit-faced for that, like the whole day on Sundays watching this stuff, just like shotgunning the whole day, and then wake up.
Yeah,
the
I'm
next
sure
day.
that was a big change for you.
Yeah, I mean, I can't do it anymore. I can't. I'm perfectly sober doing this now, and it's still destroying me. It's maybe something's terribly wrong with me. Who knows? I'll tell you, there's a lot of people saying there's something terribly wrong with those fighting nerds. Huh, Ben? See what I did there?
That's a transition.
Yes. I would like to read from the first paragraph of Ben's mailbag piece this week. Is it time to pump the brakes on the hype for the fighting nerds? Asks Ben Fowlkes of Yahoo Sports. And must Ilya Tapur... Sorry, that's a different topic. Ben, fighting nerds.
That was a good rendition, by the way.
To be clear, it's the mailbag. I'm responding to questions about the fighting nerds.
He hasn't even responded yet. This is directly the first question. He's just saying... Is it time to pump? That's what you said in that voice.
I'm going to let you in on how I write these mailbags, all right? I put out the call for the questions. The questions come in less and less each week because just Twitter engagement is in the basement if you don't pay for it. And I'll be dead in the grave before I'm going to pay Elon Musk's money to use that website. Then I look at the questions, I answer them, I pick one to put up top that seems the most timely, and then the last thing I do is write the intro paragraph to tell you what we're going to talk about. So it's the impetus, and honestly, I think I got more than one question about the fighting nerds where people were just like, I think the question was something like, do you buy the dip on the fighting nerds? Because they were ascendant. They lost some fights, and now suddenly MMA fans, we're like MMA judges in that we remember what we saw last, and we go, oh, maybe these guys actually suck. And we've seen this before with other fight teams, but maybe it seems like the life cycle of this story has been so sped up with the fighting nerds because it was like we learned about them all at once. They all were winning fights, putting on the glasses. The fighting nerds, it's a fun thing. We all went, hey, that's cool. We're into this. We want to talk about the fighting nerds. They all seem to be doing really great. They must be a great team. They must have figured something out over there. Then they lose a few fights, and people would go, actually, the fighting nerds are done. They're through. Let's move on and forget we ever liked them. And it's like, maybe you got too excited initially, and maybe you're getting too down on them now, especially because I think when you look at those individual fights, you can't pinpoint anything and be like, the fighting nerds have a clear flaw that you see in all their fighters, and now it is being exploited.
Well, just thank God that Chuck didn't get carried away with the hype, right? Chuck?
No.
Did you make your own, or did you buy it? Is that official merch?
No, this came from the fighting nerds. They actually gave me a couple of pairs of these, and
a couple pairs
of these, and I feel like I'm personally responsible for what we're talking about now, because I went and did a piece where I talked to all four of these guys.
I remember this.
In Miami. This was only in April, so we're talking only a few months back. And every single one of those guys was on top of the world. And actually, the thing that was kind of the subtext of what we were talking about was who's going to be a champion first, right? We're talking about like which one of you guys is breaking through, which one of you guys is getting a shot, all this stuff. The popular opinion was probably that Kyle would emerge as that guy because he was kind of the originating member of the fighting nerds, and he had put together the longest resume. But listen to this, man. I had to go back and look at my piece.
Oh no,
Carlos Praches had won 11 in a row at that moment in time when I was talking to him. This was right, but remember they bumped he was supposed to fight Jeff Neal. They bumped it. Then he fights Ian Gary. So it's before this happens. Hoofy, he had fought 7. He had won 7 in a row. Jean Silva had won 13, and then Barajo hadn't lost in 17 fights. He had won no contest or something, but 16 in a row where he'd won. And yet, here we are, these few months later, and all 4 of those guys have lost. Now, why is that?
Well, I mean, when you look at them individually, like the fights that they lost, I mean, okay, anybody fighting Ian Gary, tough guy to figure out, tough stylistic guy to figure out. You go in there, you lose to Nasruddin Mimavov, for crying out loud. He's been sitting there looking like he's the number one contender, even though we want to keep pretending he's not, because he doesn't have a raven on his shoulder, frankly.
That's true.
He has yet to take my advice. The John Silva, Diego Lopez one, for one thing. Diego Lopez is a guy who just fought for the featherweight title. Came a lot closer to winning it than I think a lot of us expected. And clearly a pretty good fighter. Also, though, John Silva was doing well in that fight, kind of, until he just got too aggressive. True. I mean, yeah. he almost got finished in the first round, but it was because he goes and throws a spinning kick that he shouldn't have thrown, got taken down. Honestly, it was pretty impressive that he didn't get stopped down there. He stayed in the fight. He didn't give up. He kept after John Silva, and when he got kept after Diego Lopez, and when he got back on the feet, you could tell that he was taking the approach like, "Hey, I got to go get this guy now, and I'm just gonna be nonstop pressure on him right in his face," and that backfired because you pressured your way right into that spinning back elbow. And you're down. Those are all like different kind of losses, but they're all different kind of losses to good fighters, the kind of fighters that could beat a lot of people, most people in the UFC. So I don't come away from that going, all right, clearly this was all hype to begin with. I think that it makes sense that they all start winning around the same time. We get excited about them collectively. And then when they all suffer losses around the same time, we start to look at that collectively too. I think that that's a sword that cuts two ways, and they're going to have to live with that. But I don't necessarily take anything from those fights that makes me go, fighting nerds have to get back, have a serious team meeting. You know, once I went to a fight, I went to like a regional event. It was a sport fight event in Portland. And it's kind of the early days, like mid 2000s MMA. And a Hapkido gym from somewhere in like Eastern Washington or Eastern Oregon or somewhere called the Bear Clan. They had signed up. They had put like 3 or 4 guys, including like the dude who ran their gym, all into this sport fight event. And Matt Lindland, who was running Sport Fight with Randy Couture back then, he saw what was going on there. He's like, oh, the Hapkido guys want to bring him over here. And he matched them all up against Team Quest fighters, all of them up against his own guys. And they each just got this shit beaten out of them. Of course they did. Because they got no takedown defense. All the Team Quest guys had pretty similar styles. Like, they're going to go in there, they're going to double leg you, they're going to stand up and guard, they're going to come flying down on you with that right hand, you know, Dan Henderson style. Like that. They just got the crap beaten out of every single one of them. Those guys had to have a hard conversation when they on Monday.
That's pretty brutal.
They learned that whatever they were doing at the Bear Clan Hapkido gym was not working. And, you know, the choice they faced was either like, hey, we should all learn to wrestle, you know, or did they look at each other and be like, we got to get serious about Hapkido, you guys. We must have missed something. We must have strayed away from the principle somehow. Like, that's when you need to reassess as a team and like what you're doing. These are all different kind of losses that can kind of happen to anybody, especially like guys on the way up who maybe we got a little prematurely excited about.
Yeah, and I think that like there might have been a few red flags being raised as I was talking, because you can sometimes sense that, right? Where there's something unnatural within the conversation where, you know, they're kind of owning something that's not quite the case. Like we're talking about with, you know, who's going to be the contender, but there was just this connective tissue through the fighting nerds, and it felt a little forced, if I'm being honest, where they're all kind of tied to each other. When I talked to Jean Silva, he was the last of the remaining guys who fought last, who hadn't lost in this last fight. But I when I talked to him, you know, you're asking him, like, do you feel a responsibility to correct the ship, man, to kind of like get the fighting nerds back on track? And he kind of, that was the one thing that rubbed him the wrong way. And I think it's because in teams, and this is why, you know, you worked at the IFL and then we saw this new league that tried to start up and was dead on delivery. Like, teams don't make a lot of sense in the traditional way, right, with combat sports, because they do this based on individual, like they can control their own destinies. And I think the teams are all supposed to be, in a weird way, working with them to get them to that level. And so a teammate, you try to do the same, But to wear somebody's loss, right? That's why they do an individual sport. They don't like team sports. It's a very strange dynamic, and it's had a very hard time fitting into mixed martial arts. Like a lot of times these guys, they're training partners, whatever, but they don't have teams. This is why it was a little bit more unique. And the reason it feels like the downfall is because it's not like one guy lost. It feels like one guy lost 4 times. If you were just talking about a single guy, you know what I mean? You'd be like, well, he's got a bunch of losses now. But that's not really the case. They all have one loss. That's really no big deal in MMA. It just feels like that. And that's why teams in this sport are so strange and shaky.
It's interesting you say like that he kind of backed away from the idea of the collective. When he did lose, the first thing he said was, listen, me, Hoofy, Kaio, and all the guys are going to get together and we're going to figure this thing out, you know? Like that's his reaction. So it's interesting you say that. But I also have a theory that the fighting nerds were like MMA's equivalent to like the Spice Girls. And we all had our favorite one, and everyone. I was like
Hoofy for me.
I was a Hoofy guy myself, you know.
Oh, I'm a Jean Silva guy.
Yeah.
Jean Silva.
We had this conversation before, right? So like we all picked our favorite ones. Like, oh, this is so cute. These guys who bludgeon people half to death. Like these guys, it's so cool, right? They injected the scene with this new energy, and I think we all had a great time with them. And I think that's, you know. You need to be in a situation where everyone cares about you to end up in a situation where everyone's like, oh, this gym is like, it's all over for these guys in the first place. Because most of the time, you're not fucking paying attention. You're not paying attention to how a gym is doing, right, Ben?
Yeah, I mean, I do think that we've seen some of this stuff happen before in with other gyms. And honestly, man, now that I'm thinking about it, which was my favorite Spice Girl, anybody who said Baby Spice, I feel like that's a red flag in retrospect. I feel like anybody who that was your favorite. Look at
I won't say it then, but
I'm a sporty Spice all the way. You know,
Scary Spice man. Scary Spice man.
I see. I knew it. I knew it. I mean, how many times did somebody declare Greg Jackson's gym to be either like dead or everything that's wrong with the sport? Like Dana White, at least a couple of different times.
Sport killer.
Yeah, well, there was a sport killer thing when John Jones didn't take that fight and he blamed Greg Jackson for not taking Chael Sonnen as a last-minute replacement for Dan Henderson. But then there was also criticism of their fighting style years before that. I remember being on the phone with Greg Jackson about it where he was just like, look, we crunched the numbers to show you our record as a gym in high-level MMA promotions and what our finish rate was. Because the criticism for a while was they're too safe. They're too careful. They're winning a lot of decisions. Like they've kind of figured out how to game the judges and the scoring system of the sport, and they're making it no fun anymore. And he showed, he's like, look at our finish rate compared to everybody else's finish rate. We're ahead of them. And it was just kind of perception. Like you see a couple fights that fit into this narrative that somebody else has put out there, and then everybody goes like, yeah, okay, that's it. And it's just the kind of sport that this is. It's the kind of like mindset that fans can easily have, especially because, you know, you might have your guys go out and you have a guy in 3 of 6 events, and if they all lose, we feel like, man, we can hardly remember past the last 6 events. We go, shit, it seems like you guys are just losing every time you step in the cage. And that works both ways, but here it's just the fighting nerds experiencing the negative side of it. I think that the only thing that's different is that they experienced the positive side so recently. You know, it's just it's all packed into a very short span of time for them.
It's funny too because Greg Jackson had so many fighters, right? Like that gym had a lot of guys. So in the surges where a couple of them lost, it would always feel exaggerated. Like, okay, the gym's going on, they're not doing well. But when you have that many pro fighters fighting in the UFC, it's bound to kind of happen. You mentioned Team Quest. I was around them, out in California quite a bit at one point in time, and I remember them kind of going through a big slump because they were a team, right? They had the Portland chapter, they had the Temecula chapter, and they were kind of, I remember this was around when Sokoju, was fighting, and guys like Krzysztof Shasinski or whatever remember that guy? The guy, he was still around, and Vinny Magalish and all these guys. And they all kind of just started losing, including Dan Henderson. And it kind of felt like, I don't think it was the outcry that it is for the fighting nerds because it didn't have that kind of cliquishness, but it was certainly one of those things for a guy who covers the sport. You're like, wow, what's happening to this gym? These guys can't win suddenly. And it reminds me a little bit, like, I guess the teams that have tried or they've really identified with their gyms as a team, like the Team Alpha Male back in the day when Dominic Cruz was beating all those guys. Remember, before the Garbrandt fight, there's been these moments where you see that kind of like heaping on over the course of that period of time where they're like, man, these guys have lost it. They're not doing anything. And remember that gym, man, had like Benavidez, it had Dillashaw, Faber, it had all those guys. So it was a lot of big names. I just think that it just happens. If you identify, I think Ben pointed this out, if you identify as a team, you take the criticism as a team. That's just kind of how it's going to go. It's just unusual in our sport.
You both have mentioned the phrase "in our sport." Is this an MMA thing? Or like, because I can go on, like we mentioned NFL. Sometimes I dabble on ESPN. I will find Stephen A. Smith screaming about absolutely all kinds of everything. Every
Stephen
Tuesday
A?
or whatever. I mean, it's not like him, right? Or like Skip Bayless, like saying like this is the end. Like if a team just loses one game. Is it? It does feel like an MMA thing in a way because our fan base is so vocal and unashamed and outspoken. But is it just me standing too close to the elephant, Ben?
Well, I think that the difference that you see in team sports is that if the Cleveland Browns go out there and have a terrible day on Sunday, they get to play again next Sunday. And they get an opportunity to turn right around and take away that memory for you and replace it with a better one. Or they get an opportunity to lose again and it snowballs. Fight sports are different in that sense because you feel this when you talk to fighters. They go out there and they have a bad night, they lose one, and they have to wait a long time to get back in there. If you fight every 3 months, you're incredibly active. That's about as best a reasonable case scenario as you could hope for as a fighter. But if you had a bad night, 3 months is a long time to wait to show people, hey, I'm better than what you saw. And it's a long time for people to sit around and talk about how you suck and you're done. And so I also think the difference is that in team sports, everybody kind of has their allegiances built in, where the Cowboys fans, they're gonna get concerned, they're gonna get mad about it, they're gonna be on top of the world when they win a couple in a row. Everybody kind of knows how that goes. In fight sports, you pick a favorite maybe because you see him win a fight or two, you get to know something about his personality, you go, I like that guy. But you don't necessarily feel that same baked in allegiance. If he starts to lose a couple, it's not a big deal for you to go, well, let's see who else is out there who seems like maybe I want to get on that bandwagon. Whereas, it's sort of a point of pride for people in team sports where you're just like, hey, I stuck with these people through so many terrible seasons and I'm still here. It becomes a point, like it's part of the bonding of being a fan of a team sports is that we are all mad at these guys together. They are disappointing all of us and we're in on it together. And fight sports just don't have that.
Buffalo Bills. Yeah.
How long before we have the Team Habib fraud checked headlines? Like, can you see that one coming anytime soon, Chuck?
Jeez. Well, not as long as Islam's still kind of the guy. Right? I feel like that's they're not going to find a lot of fraudulence there.
No, I think
like that kind of that they're that one gym where I'm like, when they talk about iron sharpening iron, I'm like, you think about guys like that. But at the same time, they did have back in the day when the cost check and Mike Swick, I remember them kind of going through this a little bit too. It was before all that stuff. So nobody's completely free from that kind of criticism at some point.
SBG obviously heavily got this, because Connor was the guy. And then, Kavanagh showing up on the MMA or wearing dressing gowns and whatnot. Like I feel like they were giving people plenty of ammunition at some points to be like, yeah, come on, bring it on. You had Artem there, of course. Artem who was a cult like following for his win, then loss, then win, then loss record. Of course, he's back in action in a couple of weeks.
One time I made a joking article about that.
Oh, yeah.
And boy, did I suffer that.
That was more Kavanagh than Artem, if I remember.
It was all John Kavanagh. Yeah, he quoted the Man in the Arena.
Oh, nice!
Yeah.
Classic move.
So,
man, what would the MMA community do without that quote? That has served so many different purposes.
How do they not know it's a meme at this stage? Like I see
I know.
guys doing it every time they lose.
I know, like
guys,
it's original, like they're bringing you something like, oh man, I hadn't thought of it like this.
wait a second. Hang on a second. He's talking about me.
It's to the point where, you know, me and some of my friends who are also like MMA fans or something, and you know, they'll ask me like, hey, how did last night's hockey playoff game go? You were talking about how excited you were about that, and I'll just send a screenshot of the man in the arena thing just to let them know, like,
That's great.
we didn't win.
Or else you can just say the man in the arena without giving the result. You know what I mean? Like, how did so and so get on? Just say man in the arena, and they go, oh,
Yeah.
yeah, here we are. Lads, as you know, we're a big time podcast now, and look, we're on TV, and we deserve to be there. The only issue being that we need to pay us with all of the money that we make. We need to somehow go to advertisement breaks during the show. But don't worry, because when you come back, we're going to be talking about Raja Jackson. We're going to be talking about the Eubank v Ben press conference. If you didn't see it, got a bit hairy. We have those clips for you. So please enjoy these ads and come back to us in 2 minutes.
Back in your life! Finally!
We have a lot to talk about.
I didn't care about a big fight or money. I cared about the heavyweight title. That's all I've ever been bothered about.
Join us for the entire first round live on Yahoo Sports.
This is the biggest shock of the draft.
Super Bowl 59 on Radio Row with Jaden Daniels.
Put you on the spot like that.
Here with first-time Olympian Stephen Curry. You and LeBron's relationship has had to evolve.
And see blood on the other side, but still have the utmost respect for who you're playing against.
You know, alerts on your phone. Oh, KD's thinking about leaving. Like, where is this coming from?
Coach Prime, Deion Sanders.
They don't put a gold jacket on your back and you don't know what you're doing.
The head coach of the Los Angeles Chargers, Jim Harbaugh.
It's like being around greatness.
How does that feel when you hear that? Shedeur Sanders, future NFL
quarterback.
You
know, you're the first one like I ever hear say that. Like, that's wild. But I'm thankful.
And they're going to be here for a long time.
Now to a fun part of today's program.
Like, I literally went to college with Chris Paul. Like, he's still in the NBA.
He could not hit another home run all year and be a great season.
Yes, correct. I got to make an admission first, J-Rod.
Oh, God.
I grew up a Boston Red Sox fan.
I knew that.
I used to hate you.
I've gotten to a point where I can smell you guys.
And I think winning with the Buccaneers put him at a completely different level. He has the greatest resume of any quarterback in football history.
They have a chance to get to the Eastern Conference Finals and win it. The realist in me says that ain't happening at all.
I don't want to treat you like a regular journalist because I feel like me and you have a good relationship.
I would put Travis Hunter in that same category as those two players. The difference between he and Rome Odunze, Travis Hunter is just a special athlete.
I actually think this is a smart decision by them.
This is what we're going to bring in. This is who we are. This is the style that we're doing.
And it was a long, beautiful conversation.
What a fun interview, Dave.
Hey, thanks, Coach.
Are you not like all talked out after talking to people for so long?
This is my life.
Okay.
I could do this for 8 hours.
Got it.
Wow.
And there we go. We've kicked out the makeup artists and all those people. We just need 2 minutes to refresh. You know what I mean? Get our thoughts in order, and of course, all of the money into the bank accounts, which is the most important part of podcasting, of course. Lads, Chuck Mindenhall wasn't here when we were talking about the Raja Jackson episode. In fact, we were all on vacation when this happened, and when we came back, I was telling Ben how I was listening to him speak about this when I was on a Greek beach. Crazy story. Here's the first two paragraphs of an article that is on Uncrowned at the moment. Raja Jackson, the son of MMA legend Quinton Rampage Jackson, was arrested Thursday in Los Angeles. That's yesterday, nearly a month after a brutal attack on a pro wrestler was captured live on stream. The arrest was first reported by TMZ. Uncrowned has confirmed via Los Angeles County Jail records that Jackson was arrested in the morning on a felony charge with a bail set at $50,000. The attack in question occurred on August 24th at the Knox Pro Wrestling event, which was being streamed on Kick. Jackson can be seen entering the ring and hoisting independent wrestler Stuart Smith, aka Psycho Stu, above his head, then slamming him down with his head hitting the mat. Jackson then mounts the unconscious wrestler and throws down more than 20 punches at his head before a group of other wrestlers rip him away. You can check out the rest of that article on Uncrowned, but it's a crazy story, Chuck. How have you unpacked this all? Like, it's just such a weird, unique situation, I guess, right?
You know, it's funny because you're right. Nobody was responding. I think Ariel was also out, and I remember everybody was saying like, "Hey, why are you ducking it, man? Why aren't you talking about Raja? Why aren't you doing this?" Nobody was actually saying that to me. So I felt like I kind of dodged one there. But at the same time, I don't know how I didn't catch what if you've talked about this before, but that footage, when I saw it, I was like, "What?" It struck me as something that wasn't real. It struck me as something that wasn't. You're used to wrestling, quick flashes with the camera, like boom, boom. They don't really show you impact and stuff like that. But you're watching in a wrestling ring something go on that you're like, what the hell is happening? And if you see something like, I used to always, for whatever reason on Twitter, like I'd be on some algorithm where it would show me like a street fights.
Yeah.
It would show you like these brutal things. Like I don't get them anymore, but there was a moment in time where they would show you these, and it always had that same feeling of like, oh, because you'd see somebody get knocked out, hit the pavement, and then somebody come in and just hit them again and again. And you're like, dude, somebody step in there. It's a crazy feeling that you get when you see that. That's the feeling it gave me. It was like watching, and that's what he's charged with, assault. And there was a moment just like this last week where I was wondering, is nothing going to come of this? Because you know how our news cycle moves. It's like suddenly you're like, man, this is just going by. Nobody's talking about it anymore. Is this guy just going to go scot-free on this? So I guess in a strange way, because it was such a visceral like the way it was presented, everybody had seen it, just the kind of damage it caused, and the video itself just being like what it is. I'm like, I guess I'm happy that some action was taken on this, because you start to lose your bearings on what's a crime anymore, like at this point. So I was, I guess, relieved that something was actually happening, because I don't think that sort of thing, man, that's just very unhinged. And that kind of thing, if you have that in you to hit a guy down when he's down like that, unconscious from the moment for like 20 times, I mean, what else can you do? So I'm just glad that some action has been taken here.
Yeah, it's a felony charge. There is different reports going around as to what it is. Battery. I was doing some very brief research in terms of what kind of sentence he could be looking at. It looks like it's a huge kind of range in terms of what he could go down for, like from a minimum of a year to like decades in prison. This could be. I mean, this feels like this could be the end of this guy's life for a significant amount of time, Ben. It seems crazy, and the craziest thing about it to me has remained the same. It's this mixture of technology versus reality. Him being goaded on this screen as he's sitting at this event is just such a disturbing scene. Like these streaming guys and the impact that this can have on the way you act in society is crazy to me. It's obviously Rampage as well, has been tangentially and kind of involved in this. He came onto Ariel's show to speak about it. We spoke about that at the time, but isn't this crazy that we ended up here where this guy shows up to a wrestling event with no plans of anything happening really at all? I think he was just meant to attend. Then Psycho Stu hits him with a can thinking he was working. They then arranged to sort it out in the ring to some extent. And as far as I'm concerned, no one really explained to Raja the extent of what that meant, sorting this issue out. Goes in, and obviously we see the power bomb, an unconscious Psycho Stu immediately, and then him just unloading on an unconscious wrestler. Like it's, I think there's going to be a lot of appetite for him to be handed down a very stern sentence here. Would I be wrong in saying that, Ben?
Yeah, I mean, I'd be surprised if it ended up being decades, or I think it'll be notably less severe than that. Right. I was surprised how long this investigation took to result in an arrest, just because so much of it is right there.
I know.
So I was just wondering, like, we're not exactly investigating the Watergate break-in here. This is not a ton of information you
waiting
have to
for
go
evidence,
out in search of. Yeah, it's so much of it was very intentionally on tape, on video, and up to not only just what happened before, what happened during, what he was saying beforehand about what he intended to do. Like, all that stuff was right out there, and it was surprising to me that it took that long, because it was getting to the point where you were going, wait a minute, is anything going to happen here? Did we just forget about this? Did we move on? Did we get distracted by something else? as seems like it can always happen. I don't know. It's the thing to me, I guess, is that you would like to see more support for him from Rampage of all people. I still was really shocked and saddened by Rampage's take on it when he went on Ariel's show, where he was just like, I'm not talking to him right now because he dishonored my name. And it's just like, first of all, we've all, those of us who've been following the sport for a long time, seen Rampage dishonor his own name before, you know, and Rampage do stuff where he would have not liked to have the people, the loved ones in his life, turn their backs on him just because he messed up. That's when, you know, you need your loved ones, your dad, to be there for you, to support you even when you messed up. I mean, that is the difference between like family and just friends you have in your life, is that your family's supposed to love you all the time. And that part, I hope Rampage maybe sees the error of that thinking, because yeah, this clearly is going to move forward into a potentially serious thing for Raja. So at least you'd like to think that Rampage will be there for him.
You almost wonder if, because Rampage came out with a statement right away that people saw as too lax. Remember, like it was like he came out and everybody was kind of saw it as like, hey, what are you talking about? This was an assault, and it's almost like he went completely the other direction when he talked to Ariel to correct that. And again, I'm with you. That was a very strange piece of this whole thing. Was just, you know, the reason we're paying attention to Raja, and probably the reason he's even in that spot, is because he is his son, right? Like, so you would expect, I guess, I hate to say professional in this, like in this sport, because so much of it is not professional, but you would want some genuine, you know, hard understanding and love there, like where you're just like, listen, man, he made a huge mistake. I don't know what was going through his head, but that's something we got to sort through. So I feel like that became part of this storyline, right? Is just the kind of strange rift there with that Jackson has presented to his son. So it's like it's a crazy thing for what I'm trying to say is, like, in a fight game, it's hard to be shocked. You know what I mean? Like, did you see so much? But I still think that was one of the more shocking things that's happened this year.
When do you think we'll find out, like, how long or what the sentence is here for this kind of situation? I can't help but think, like, there would be, and I don't know which cases this applies to or not, but I feel like this whole thing has played out online. I feel like every part of this, as Ben said, like it would almost feel fitting for this to be like,
there wasn't a lot of contrition, right? Like, I mean, even that's caught on tape. Like, it's just kind of like that stuff, you know?
A huge part in turning people against him as well. The way he was behaving, the way he was reacting to people being like, this guy's still down. I think that definitely went against people. People felt really, really, really impassioned about this whole situation, which is what I was going to say. Like, this feels like appropriately should be on Core TV nearly at this stage, because every single facet of it has been played out. Like, we've been able to look through absolutely everything. And I think the public interest in this would be huge. How does that decided? Like, does it depend on what, like, state you're in? Like, how do they decide these things? Like, what's going on TV in terms of court cases over there?
Is there still Court TV? Does that still exist?
Well, I remember the Johnny Depp one, right? The Johnny Depp case with Amber Heard, that was all over the place. Like, people were watching that here while they were in work all day and stuff. It's crazy. Like, I'd
you didn't watch that one, Ben?
No, I relied on other people to fill me in after on that one. I mean, you know, the wheels of justice can grind rather slowly in this country at times. I would think something like this, you'd probably settle with some sort of plea deal that they, you know, Roger Jackson would probably be given.
I mean, you can't really plead not guilty, right?
It's a tough one. It's a tough one. Like, I don't know what your defense would be in that kind of situation. And it also
wasn't me.
And it might depend on like what we hear from the victim in this case, that kind of stuff, you know, what kind of like restitution you can make to the victim. I don't know. It does seem though, like like Chuck said, I had a similar feeling when I watched that video, where for one thing, I felt like, I wish I hadn't seen that now that I have. I wish that wasn't in my brain. I remember, because it was just going around the internet, and I remember I saw it like shortly before I was going to go to bed, and I was troubled. to the point where I was just like, I definitely didn't need that in my head right before I lay down and try to go to sleep here. And so that kind of thing, if I'm anybody involved in like a defense for Raja Jackson, I'm like, we don't want to get into any sort of situation where we're in a trial and that video gets shown over and over again.
Isn't it crazy, real quick? Like, we're used to, if a guy goes unconscious, he gets punched or knocked out in any possible way, he may land that extra shot or two. And we're always like, oh, God, what are they doing? Come on, ref, get in there quicker. But generally, you don't see that. This was part of the crazy, surreal nature of that video, was that the people around it were just kind of like nonchalant, going around there where nobody was jumping in there like, hey, whoa, what are you doing, man? There was none of that. So that's why I was like, what am I watching? Is this real? Like, what is going on here? It's just such a bizarrely disturbing piece of video. It really is, for those reasons. Like, you're just used to people not doing that. You know, even a guy in an MMA fight, I mean, there might be some guys who, and we've seen it, like Dan Henderson coming down on Bisping. We've seen guys hit him like with something big on that follow-up that you're just like, gosh. But have you ever just seen anybody wailing on somebody who's unconscious? I mean, it's too much, you know? And I mean, I guess that because we're used to somebody intervening, that's what made it so strange to me. It's like nobody intervened.
Yeah. I wonder if that was like, they were still like, well, that was what I was thinking at the time, was they all think that this guy's acting. They think like he's selling this power bomb that he's just received, and now he's eating these punches. But it's happening so quickly because time slows down on those unanswered shots. Even in MMA, when it happens for me, like when you can tell the guy's out and the referee just isn't there on time, those seconds feel like minutes. Like, you're just like, oh shit, here we go, it's happening again, and you're just, come on ref, and usually, thankfully, they do get in there. I have another inappropriate question on the back of my Court TV inquiry. So, and this is the most fucked up thing about the fight game. Because Chael Sonnen made a point, and he's correct about this, and he's often correct in terms of what fascinates people, what intrigues people. He happens to be an expert in it. He was speaking about...
But he's not often correct in general. But anyways, go ahead.
Yeah. He was speaking about Craig Jones looking for an opponent. And like literally the week after this happened, he was on Ariel's show. And I think it was Craig Jones had called him like, who would we get to do this? I think he was trying to get Chael. And Chael said, why don't you get Raja Jackson? And like, as crazy as that was to say that, I was thinking the world is so messed up that if they could actually do that, everyone, like, people would buy the shit out of it. And
man, didn't Chael just miss his calling as a pro wrestling promoter?
Exactly.
Because those instincts, that is the instincts. If he had been born 40 years earlier,
it's true,
he would have run a Pacific Northwest like Chael Sonnen's big time wrestling, and it would have been one of the territories that you came through. You know, he'd be out there promoting Kurt Hennig versus Superfly Jimmy Snuka, and man, because that is. Like, if you were just trying to grab attention and make headlines and didn't much care how you did it, I guess that would work.
Well, here's the point. I don't know if you've met a lot of combat sports promoters, Ben, but that's kind of the fucking business they're in, buddy. I'm not going to lie to you. And my question is, this guy goes in, right? We're saying we don't think it's going to be a decade-long sentence. Like, am I crazy to think that people would be queuing up to get this guy involved from a situation that was so horrific they can make money off this guy somehow competing on their cards?
Dude, they're trying to book Andrew Tate into a boxing match with Darren Till, aren't they?
Yes, they are.
I mean, that's a good point. Like, especially that if you bring any sort of notoriety, it means you bring attention, and this is an attention economy above all else. And, you know, it's when I was working with my friend Chad Dundas and a bunch of other people, and we wrote a bunch of like themed short stories in a shared kind of fictional universe about pro wrestling territories, those days of like, you know, the 60s, 70s, early 80s of different pro wrestling territories. And I did a lot of research for it, including listening to this podcast where Jerry Jarrett, who used to be the promoter of Memphis Wrestling, was talking, and he told a story about Randy Savage and his father and brothers running a competing organization in like Louisville, and they would just go on their TV show every week and just talk enormous amounts of shit about Memphis wrestling and about all the different Memphis wrestlers and about Jerry Jarrett, and it was their thing, like trying to create this rivalry, and then they went under. Just because it was maybe not the greatest strategy. And he said Randy Savage called him up and was just sort of like, hey, I just wanted to be like, hey, we're shutting down. And I want to make sure you know that it was all business. There was no hard feelings there. And he said, well, hey, why don't you come work for me? And he said, really? You want me to work for you even after all the shit we said about you? And he said, listen, in this business, I don't believe that we should ever waste heat. If we got it, you guys went ahead and created it, you put all this effort into creating a thing where people think that there's something between us. People think there are hard feelings between us. Don't just let that dissipate. Let's do something with it. Come work for me. We'll work with that knowledge that the audience already has. And I think that there's a lot of promoters who would take that some similar approach with something like that with Roger Jackson if he were free, you know?
Didn't Tanya Harding have like a boxing match, or am I misremembering
I think you're right.
this?
Yeah,
you did.
I mean, I feel like the idea of this sort of thing. I mean, especially because the Raja's had some MMA fights, right? Like he's actually involved in the sport. His dad being who he is, I can guarantee you this is crossing people's minds. I can guarantee it. I mean, you know, there were certain people. You know, the Bryce Mitchell one comes to mind, where you're like, well, he says something completely crazy. Let's put him John Silva. We'll put him against John Silva, and like people tune in because it's just some people want to see him get his ass kicked, right? Like, or that kind of concept. But it's really just you got this firebrand who people are paying attention to. That's kind of the same situation. The fact that he might get served some comeuppance only adds to it, right? So I feel like that certainly is going to play in, and it'll be interesting if he doesn't go away for a long time. I feel like it's a certainty that he'll end up in a fight with somebody like in a big situation like that.
Well, speaking of not wanting to waste heat, Matchroom certainly don't want to do that, Ben. And they're doing Chris Eubank v. Conor Benn again, this time in November. And yeah, well, guess what? The press conference going to turn into an Eddie Hearn v. Chris Eubank situation again. Eubank making some lofty claims, but maybe let's start off with the clip of Hearn trying to pay tribute to the late Ricky Hatton. And Chris Eubank, who never wants Eddie Hearn to speak at press conference, who's made that abundantly clear, decides to cut him off at that point. If we have that one, please, New York Rick.
Just a couple of... You might... Just going to say 30 seconds about Ricky Hatton.
No, there's no 30
Chris, 1 second.
You know the drill.
Chris.
You know the drill. I'm not going to...
You are some arsehole, you are.
Anything you say.
Okay, then don't listen to anything.
I'm a bad guy.
No.
I'm in this.
All I was going to do was say a few words about Ricky Hatton.
Okay. Words.
Okay, I won't say anything about...
Move on with the press conference.
You're an arsehole. You talk shit. You get what's coming to you.
Over you for
it doesn't matter. You can do that.
We know
anyway,
the drill. Let's move on.
Right now, before I open this up to discussion, there is two fields of thought here, right? One being with Eddie Hearn, Chris Eubank, you're an arsehole. As soon as he mentioned Ricky Hatton's name, just let this happen. The other side being Eddie is trying to speak at this press conference because he knows Chris Eubank does not want him to speak at this press conference. As he begins to speak, Eubank starts cutting him off, and then he mentions Ricky. This is not what I think. This is just what people are saying. Then he brings up Ricky's name, which he hoped would prompt Chris to stop, but then it didn't. How do we feel, lads?
Wait, you didn't think this? Because that crossed my mind. It's like, you've already got kind of a heated situation, and Eddie Hearn wasn't born yesterday. He kind of knows what he's doing, and I feel like he might have taken that occasion to maybe have that result. You know what I mean? I'm not, I think he probably really did want to say something about Hatton, but I don't think that it didn't cross his mind that this, that this type of thing could happen. Yeah.
Yeah. Boy, what do you reckon, Ben?
Maybe I'm just not as willing to think the worst of everybody as you guys. That's not, I don't know. It seemed like, he was that was what he was going to say to begin with. Maybe he performed the calculation in advance to be like, all right, as soon as I start talking, he'll jump in there. Then I'll reveal that this was what I was going to say. And then he faces two choices, which is either to continue talking over me and therefore disrespecting my attempt to pay a tribute to Ricky Hatton, or he does have to shut up and let me talk, and I've kind of won the exchange either way. Because you don't come off as a super nice guy if somebody else is just trying to be like, hey, this dude died suddenly who was important in our sport and we should spare a moment to say something about him, and you're like, no, I will not sit here for that just because of who is saying it.
Sing along.
I mean,
that was bad.
That was all
bad.
just like the spider capturing the fly in the web, that it was pretty well thought out,
know.
But still, I don't know.
Guys,
I'm inclined to think that he was just going to like speak up and say something about Ricky Hatton, and then, maybe it wasn't all an elaborate trap, but who knows? Maybe
bless your innocent heart. Have you guys ever been to one of those like a live event, and they talk about some soldier or somebody who passed, and like, a moment of silence, please, and there's always some drunk idiot who goes, starts screaming. That's what that reminded me of. It's so inappropriate, to listen to that, and where he's like, I'm just trying to say, can I please just say something about, he's just trying to talk. It drives you crazy to hear something like that, right? Because like when somebody dies, and it is, especially within your own game, the boxing game, and you're trying to have like a tribute moment and somebody tramps all over it. It's just not good, man.
First of all, I wasn't that drunk at that Colorado Rockies game that time, Chuck. And when are you going to let it go, for crying out loud?
Just to give you more of an idea of the dynamic between Chris Eubank and Eddie Hearn. Here's another accusation that was levied at the matchroom chief during this press conference. It was
laying there in a gurney, oxygen mask on, and the car cannot move. They will not open the gates to let us leave.
Now, who won't open the gates?
Now, if this was a serious injury that I had sustained, that 20 minutes...
Chris, I want to know who wouldn't open the gates. It's important.
That 20 minutes...
You can't answer that, can you?
...could have been the difference between life and death.
You talk shit, you do.
And while this was all happening, Conor Benn and Eddie Hearn are in here talking to the media, lying about how I had a broken jaw and that was the reason why I was going to hospital. Bullshit artists of the highest degree.
Chris, can we get one thing clear? Can you just confirm that you are accusing us?
I am
Matchroom?
Or yes.
Okay, say it.
You guys
say it.
Me from
say it.
Out.
Say it.
Because
Matchroom.
Who else
Okay.
would have been?
Go on, say it.
Why was
say
it? Why was I in an ambulance?
Say that Matchroom stops you from going to the hospital.
Why was I what? So you can try and sue me with your little lawyer?
Not at all. Don't worry about that. Okay. I think you're talking about the wrong guy.
You're not
say
supposed to be up here.
Exactly what it is.
These are the levels.
You talk shit.
These are the levels.
We stopped you
Ben, I mean,
your toenail
doesn't have to say a word, really.
Heard it all now.
Well, there you
Fight
go.
sells itself.
Like, it's incredible, the two moments that come out of this, despite the hatred and the generational hatred between the Eubank and Ben clans. It's Eddie Hearn versus Chris Eubank.
I feel like we don't get a lot of this, and I mean, the kinds of press conferences that we have, it's usually between two fighters. You don't really get Dana involved with a fighter or anything like that, right? And then usually Dana's like, "Who's got the next question?" At the soon, whenever you can jump in and intervene. These things, it's just like a soap opera. They just let it play out. Like, I love that about the boxing, the tension that builds in those rooms sometimes, man. But Eddie Hearn,
in boxing, they have guys who can actually talk back to the promoter without worrying
that
about
is true.
blackballed from the sport.
Yeah, nobody told Canelo with the Dana one, right? Like,
yeah, and in the UFC, everybody's got to kiss the ring and hope for favor from the emperor. The boxing is different. I do like Eddie Hearn. This is a thing that I wish that Americans could work into our speech, where he says, instead of, if you just say you're an asshole, it only lands so hard. But when you add, you're an asshole, you are. Like, there's something about it where you're like underlining it. You talk shit, you do.
It's true.
And it's just like, oh, okay. Like it makes it land with more force somehow.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. I'm gonna try to use that.
You gotta adapt that. It's like, that's good. That's
it's common around these parts. I'm not gonna lie to you. But I gotta ask, I was actually speaking to New York Rick, who cannot appear or comment on this show due to his legal situation with Boys in the Back. He was the big champion of the first fight, and of course he comes off shining like gold because he called this would be an amazing fight. It was an amazing fight, like theatrics, everything. Chris Eubank arriving with his son, that walk, it was fucking unbelievable. The fight itself was insanity.
No eggs so far this time, though.
No eggs.
We're missing
time.
that.
Well, you know, the first press conference, there's a lot of time. It's November.
Yeah.
But am I crazy? Like, this possibly can't live up to the first fight, as far as I'm concerned, Chuck. Like, am I crazy here?
Man.
Like, I just feel like it was so perfect. Everything was so perfect. The public weren't exactly on their side, even though it was in Wembley, I believe it was, or Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. They got lots of people in there, and then for it to shine, despite this criticism I had, I just don't know if it can be that magic again, you know?
I mean, it's a good problem to have that you're like, will it live up to what it's starting to build into? Because I think that when you get that off, it doesn't really, the big win, right, will be at the box office in that sense, because they're building it up. But dude, I got a feeling it will. You know, it's like you're dealing with guys who genuinely don't like each other. I saw some interview though where Ben had been like, I don't know if it was a joke, it was just a clip where he's like, hey, I think after this all we could be friends. I don't know if that was a you know, if that was just like something where he was joking around, but these guys have such heat, you know, like real heat that it brings, you know, I feel like when this happens, sometimes I'm not losing to this dude. I'm not losing to this dude. And that's genuinely when you get a guy who goes out there willing to die in the ring. And if you get two of those, it produces a classic fight, you know? I think it's got that potential. Maybe I'm just being optimistic because the first fight was really fantastic, but I think it could, man.
What do you reckon, Ben? Got your juices flowing?
Yeah, I mean, this is the hardest part, is getting people interested in the same fight over again, and getting people to get excited this far in advance to see the same fight. And they seem to be doing that. You know, you throw some breakfast foods in there, and who knows? Maybe you got something.
It does. It like to Chuck's point earlier. Like even being around the sport last week, it seems like they're having a lot more fun. Everyone's like buzzing. I don't know how to. Maybe look, and it could be the fact that I don't go to many of these events. I'm arriving in, going, wow, look at all this. It's like a TV set, and everyone, like, you know, Eddie's speaking to everybody. Like all the team are going out of their way to make sure you've got everything and everything. But then it just seems like boxing are just having themselves a little jolly compared to MMA at the moment. Is that just my cold, dead, jaded heart?
Now, wait, hey, when you told us when you were going to that event and they sent you the email beforehand to encourage you to dress intelligently, was that how they said it? Yes. And I am curious what you ended up going with and if it proved to be the intelligent choice.
It didn't rain. It didn't rain. It was, I went with all black because I was like, this is going to get terrible. I had a black parka on, a black sweater, a t-shirt, black jeans. I was just like, if they get wet, no one's going to know. In the end, I was just very, very cold. It was freezing. We're all sitting there just shaking, watching the fights, but it was a great night, honestly. We actually, again, look, we got to get paid, guys. And it's coming up to old ad o'clock. I'm not going to lie to you, but please hang around because we're going to pay tribute to one of the greats, Tom Gerbasi, who passed away earlier this week. The lads in particular know the man very well, would have had dealt with him over the years a lot more than me. I've had a few meetings with him over my time too, and a great guy. So please come back. Chuck's wrote a brilliant piece about it for Uncrowned, and we would love to pay tribute to the great man with you guys.
Back in your life! Finally!
We have a lot to talk about.
I didn't care about a big fight or money. I cared about the heavyweight title. That's all I've ever been bothered about.
Join us for the entire first round live on Yahoo Sports.
This is the biggest shock of the draft.
Super Bowl 59 on Radio Row with Jaden Daniels.
Put me on the spot like that.
Here with first-time Olympian Stephen Curry. You and LeBron's relationship has had to evolve.
And see blood on the other side, but still have the utmost respect for who you're playing against.
You know, alerts on your phone. Oh, KD's thinking about leaving. Like, where's this coming from?
Coach Prime, Deion Sanders. They don't put a gold jacket on your back and you don't know what you're doing.
The head coach of the Los Angeles Chargers, Jim Harbaugh.
It's like being around greatness.
How does that feel when you hear that? Shador Sanders, future
You know,
NFL
you're the
quarterback.
first one like I ever hear say that. Like, that's why. I'm thankful.
And they're going to be here for a long time.
Now to a fun part of today's program.
Like, I literally went to college with Chris Paul. Like, he's still in the NBA.
He could not hit another home run all year. It'd be a great season.
Yes, correct.
I gotta make an admission first, Aaron.
Oh gosh.
I grew up a Boston Red Sox fan.
I knew that.
I used to hate you.
I've gotten to a point where I can smell you guys.
And I think winning with the Buccaneers put him at a completely different level. He has the greatest resume of any quarterback in football history.
They have a chance to get to the Eastern Conference Finals and win it. The realist in me says that ain't happening at all.
I don't want to treat you like a regular journalist because I feel like me and you have a good relationship.
I would put Travis Hunter in that same category as those two players. The difference between he and Rome Odunze, Travis Hunter is just a special athlete.
I actually think this is a smart decision by them. This is what we're going to bring in. This is who we are. This is the style that we're doing.
And it was a long, beautiful conversation.
What a fun interview, Nate.
Hey, thanks, coach. Are you not like all talked out after talking to people for so long?
This is my life.
Okay.
I could do this for 8 hours.
Got it.
Wow.
And we're back on the Craic. And, to Ariel's credit, I do believe he could do that for 8 hours. Me, a little over an hour.
He does it. Usually doesn't he? Something like that.
He's a wild man. We obviously know earlier in the week, Ariel paid tribute to Tom. And you wrote a brilliant piece about this, Chuck. I read it this morning before we did the show, just so it would be fresh in my memory. But it's funny to me that Rick said on Wednesday's show, I believe it was, that everybody has a very similar story about Tom. Now, we obviously couldn't tell it as well as you did, but it's perfect headline, the man who championed so many, because I think we've all been championed by him. He was a guy that's checked in on me so much, despite only meeting him in person twice. You guys knew him far better than me, so please, Chuck, if you can, tell me what made Tom such a special guy.
I wish I knew that, because I would try to be more like Tom. I mean, honestly, he was one of those guys that it was kind of astonishing over the course of time, because the way that I kind of described this in the little tribute piece there, I'd met him after writing something that was in a fairly obscure news weekly out in the Inland Empire, and I really don't remember how he got a hold of it, but he saw the piece and he just, that's how I kind of had correspondence with him. It could have been that I reached out. I really don't remember anymore, but he was like, hey, would you like to do these a couple of profiles? And at the time, I'm an editor at a paper, so I have nothing really to do with the fight game other than the piece I just written, which was just one of many subjects that you were covering out there. And I said, sure, I did it. And that's all I did. And I think I might have done a few pieces, and I'd see him at events. I saw him at UFC 84, and then I pointed out that UFC 88 event. And it was weird because he just kind of took me under wing, introduced me to these guys. And at this time, remember, I think MMA Live was a thing, and that's how Franklin was already kind of a known player in the game. Kevin Iole had been around boxing and MMA, so he was this guy. And then Neil Davidson, these guys were like these guys who were well entrenched in the fight game. And he's chatting me up as if I'm among them, as if I should be. And I was like, man, I kind of wish I was, but I'm not like that. But it was strange. There was just this warmth that he had. It never went away. I remember feeling it on that very time, because he was introducing me to people at the UFC event. I didn't know anybody. He's introducing me to like Joe Silva, people like that, the big players. And over the years, man, obviously, I didn't do that for very long. I went and worked at all these other places, and he's constantly been in touch, constantly, there's never been hard feelings about anything. I've never had a single thing where something's happened where he had a hard feeling about it. Even if you're criticizing the UFC, he stayed out of that, the political side of it. He stayed out of all of that stuff. Yeah. He just was that guy. He would remember my daughter's birthday. I remember I pointed out in that thing when she went to kindergarten. He knew this. I don't remember how he knew exactly, but he called me that day. Things like that. You're like, it's just a fairly incredible human being who, puts his busy schedule. If you knew this guy, how much he wrote and how much he did on a daily basis, had several books and just wrote about a variety of different things, including boxing and all of the upkeep with the UFC, you'd be like, how does he have time to remember little things going on in my life? But that's what he did. And in that piece, it's funny because you mentioned that everybody kind of has a similar story. That's what I've heard. Everybody who's kind of dealt with him is like, man, that has been my experience with him. It's been like that with me too. And to think of that many people that he touched, over the course of the time, their lives, and played, a role in just being a good human being, especially in a sport like this where there aren't too many of them, it stands out. And I think that's why it was such a, just a very tragic thing to get that news. And it left a big hole in the fight game, man.
Ben, please tell me about your relationship with Tom.
Yeah, I mean, I was not anywhere near as close as with him as Chuck was, but I worked on a story that should be going up later today where I talked to a bunch of other people who knew him very well, worked with him to kind of get that sense. And the thing that you hear over and over again, for one, is, as Chuck said, the kind of inclusivity where he was always really willing to help everybody. And that is kind of rare, especially in the media space, and in the media space for a sport like this, where it's not like there's ever been too many jobs to go around. And a lot of people are very protective of their territory, their spot. You reach out, you're a competitor, or, you're just from some other site, you're wanting contact information, you're wanting something. The impulse might be like, why should I help you? Why should I help you get it potentially ahead of me? And he was one of the people who was never ever like that. Was always just like very excited to help people, very willing to help mentor other people. And you just don't see that a lot. But the thing that also came across, especially in talking to people who either do work for the UFC or have worked for the UFC, is just what a source of institutional knowledge he was for them there. And that's the part that I wonder, man, what are they going to do to even attempt to replace him? Because that's a huge loss for the UFC. I don't think there is any one person who can replace him. I think you're going to need several people to do that. Because, I would talk to these UFC people for this story, and they'd say he just became a sort of in-house Google for them, where if we were having an argument about, is Stefan Struve actually 7 feet tall or is he 6'11"? Call Tom. That was always the way you settle it, is just like, Tom Gerbasi will know. Call him up. He will be, we want to know exactly what year Pride kind of stopped being Pride. We want to know what year, like this guy, when did he first actually get into MMA versus what it says on the record? Call Tom. And that level of knowledge, to have lost that in one person, is going to be a huge loss for the UFC, but also for the sport. And also just the different things he was doing for the UFC. Yeah, I think people might look at it and they go, all right, I recognize the byline from reading stories on the website. So what? He's a guy who wrote stories on the website. And it's a point that Ant Evans, who writes for us sometimes on the Uncrowned, made. And he worked for the UFC for many years. He was like, Tom would not get precious about much, would not insist on credit, did not like that kind of attention. But the one thing that he was kind of notably proud of is that he was not the editorial director of UFC.com. He was the editorial director of the UFC. And if you saw anything come out of the UFC that had any written word element to it, he had a hand in it. And he said that extended from, the trading cards, the little bios on the back of the trading cards, people who needed help with their speech for the UFC Hall of Fame, coming up with, even things like metadata on the UFC Fight Pass videos, or the UFC video game. Ant pointed out that at one point they had a problem in the UFC video game where somebody was looking at the work that the makers of the video game were doing, looking at the fighter ratings, they're rated in all these different categories. And somebody said, hey, how do you have Dan Hardy with a higher rating than George St. Pierre has on the UFC video game? And then the answer that they would come up with was, all right, we'll just get somebody at the UFC to do it. And he said, whenever somebody said, we'll get somebody at the UFC to do it, he was always that somebody. And that came in handy when the UFC was purchased by WME, because, I think we all remember they told us right away, the new ownership group was telling their investors, we're going to find efficiencies at the UFC. And that meant cutting a lot of people. That meant just getting rid of jobs that they thought, oh, we know somebody else who can do this, like who already works for us. A lot of people were casualties of that. And he said that one of the things they looked at was Tom Gerbasi's role. And then enough different people in different departments at the UFC were like, hey, if you get rid of this guy, I'm going to have to hire a full-time guy just to do what he did for my department. And somebody else is going to have to hire a guy for what he did for their department. You're going to need 3 or 4 different people in order just to fill the hole, not even to be better off than you were before. You're going to end up spending way more money that way. And so they kept him. And you kind of look at it and you go, is there a longer tenured UFC employee, maybe Dana White, But other than that, like you don't see a lot of these people stick around for that long, for 2 decades, at the UFC, either because they get burned out or they move on to something else, or the UFC gets rid of them or something. Like somebody who's been there that long is really, really rare and is such a asset for them to lose. And it's just like it's a gut punch for all the friends that he made. He was such a warm, friendly guy that so many people loved him. What was the other thing? When somebody dies like this, you hear that cliche where somebody's like, everybody loved him, never had a bad word to say. And it's almost never true. There's always somebody who has a bad word to say, except for Tom. Like, especially in this industry, plenty of people got bad words to say about all three of us. Especially Petesy. And but Tom, nobody had a bad thing to say. And that's, somebody was telling me there were like, hey, we had like a saying kind of that was, if anybody had a problem with Tom, you knew that was a problem with them. You knew it wasn't that he did anything, and like there are not that many people like that. And to have lost him like suddenly like this, especially when, he just had a book come out, he's training for yet another marathon, all this kind of stuff is very shocking. And it's a tough week for a lot of people.
I've been spending the week kind of looking back on different things he popped up on, and there he is with his book there. If you guys want an absolutely brilliant book, go and get Boxing, the 100 Greatest Fighters by Thomas Gerbasi. It is available in all good bookstores, and I know GC's already got his copy delivered and everything. Fair play, GC, even though boys in the back of the Craic don't quite get on with each other anymore. But anyway,
one other thing, Elliot Warsaw, our boxing guy, was that when I did a couple of pieces, I remember he was doing stuff there too with Ant and those guys way back in the day. So I mean, again, he just kind of had. It was like he was one of the rare guys who kind of extended into the boxing, and because if you looked at a lot of the, if you saw a lot of the people who were like, man, I can't believe this, and paying their tributes, it was the boxing world, even more than MMA. So I mean, he extended both ways, and so he had the whole combat sphere, mourning him. That's saying something, man.
And he received the Nat Fleischer Award from the Boxing Writers Association of America just last year, so it was definitely, they all recognized the work that he had done there and just how long. And honestly, somebody from the UFC sent me the Medium post, because that was the other thing, is just like how much writing he was doing just for fun, because he was doing so much stuff for the UFC, churning out so much stuff. Ant was telling me, he was like, I asked him once what his like daily word count was, and he told me, and I said, I couldn't hit that if I was just writing words out of the dictionary. And in addition to that, he's doing like music reviews on Medium. He's writing stuff for the Village Voice, and one of the Medium posts
cover
he did,
roller derby.
He was really into roller derby there in New York, and so he would write stuff on that, and like a lot of stuff these are just for fun, just because he wanted to. And I read his Medium piece about the one and only boxing match he had in 1997. He signed up for the New York Golden Gloves, and it's hilarious. I in my story, when it comes out there's the link in it, and everybody should read it because he has so many great lines, and especially he got knocked out in this fight. And the New York Daily News or somebody, or New York Post, whoever was there, like writing something about, here's what happened at the Golden Gloves this year. They noted that he was down on the mat for a good 30 or 40 seconds. And one of his friends said, what would be a bad 30 or 40 seconds? If that was a good one. And he just has so many good lines in there, especially about, like signing up for one of these like gym fights at Gleason's before the Golden Gloves, and how, he's exhausted by the end of round one. He goes back to his corner, and his coach is telling him like, no, look over there at that guy. He's more tired than you are. And he's like, what I wanted to tell him, if I could have breathed, if I could have got the breath to say anything, was if he was more tired than I am, he'd be dead right now. Just hilarious.
Oh man.
But yeah. Oh yeah, like same similar to Chuck's story. First time I met him, Jeremy Botter introduced me to him. It was over there for one of the McGregor fights. It might have been McGregor's first Vegas fight against Poirier. And Botter was like, it was like meeting the shot caller of the entire industry. Like the way Botter was talking about him on the way over was like, oh gee, what am I gonna do? This is gonna be what if he doesn't like me? All this kind of stuff. And he's sitting at a table with Chuck. You were there. Wagenheim was there, and Kevin Ioli was there. I think Luke Thomas might have been there as well. Everybody was in town for the fights back then, you know. And I was just so nervous. I didn't know where to look. I was like, which guy is this? And straight away, just like the loveliest guy in the world, knew who I was, knew all about Severe MMA, who I was writing for at the time. And I met him again after that. And again, just a lovely interaction with him. But it's funny that he must have had a great sense of people, because I'd get these messages off him when my confidence would be on the ground as a writer, and you'd get this message off him. And I can remember the last time he reached out to me, it was just when I'd started for Run the Crown again. And all of you guys can remember, like, you guys deserve a lot of credit too, because you had to prop me up, because I was like, I don't really have the confidence for this anymore, this writing stuff. I'd rather just talk shit on a podcast. That comes a lot more naturally to me. I wrote an article about Shaky Shore and him getting over cancer. And Tom just messaged me saying, Petesy, it's 6:30 here, and I just read your article, and it's absolutely brilliant. It makes me feel good about writing when I read stuff like this. I just want to let you know. And I was like, geez, like, you know, getting a message off of a guy that's pretty much a deity in your industry like that, just out of nowhere. And you're just like, your whole month is made, and you're feeling like you're 10 foot tall. And he did that many times to me, and did not know me very well, but treated me like a best friend every time I was in his company. And you know, as the lad said, just echoing everything they said, like, just an absolute gem of a guy. What was the word count, if you don't mind me asking, Ben? Because I've been hearing all about this, all of these different writings, and just writing for fun. Imagine that. Like, what is he clocking a day here?
I think it was like 4,000 or 5,000 words.
Yeah, but I believe that. I think he really did do that. It's crazy, man. Most prolific guy I've ever known to do it.
Yeah.
If people think that's easy, try sitting down and getting to 1,000 a day.
I know.
That's a college dissertation. It's 5,000 words. He's doing it every day, for God's sake. It's crazy.
And you know, man, like, I know, just to put a cap on, like, I don't know if you ever saw like fighters interacting with him, but I would see that over the years too, and all the fighters loved him. You know, It's just, it was one of those things that he you know, kind of extends beyond just us guys that he like helped or was checking in on. The fighters themselves really loved him too. Boxers, MMA guys, everybody.
And that was another story I heard, is that, you know, he wrote literally the UFC encyclopedia, which they put out 2 different editions of. And at one of the UFC expos, they wanted him to sit down at one of the tables and sign copies of that for people. And he was just, you know, not the kind of guy who liked that sort of attention and didn't want the focus to be on him. But he said, all right, fine, like, I'll do it. But was also kind of like, who's going to want to come over here and like get my signature on this book? Like, they don't even know that I wrote it, and this is stupid. And I think it was Ann Evans who told me he wasn't sitting there 5 minutes, and Frankie Edgar saw him and came over there and was just like, oh, you're sitting here, you signing this book? Well, hey, I'll sit here with you and sign with you, so that like people will come over, and then another fighter comes over, and then another fighter. And these are guys who had been attending to these kinds of duties all day long for sponsors, for the UFC, like for money, because they were obligated to. And here was one that nobody asked them to do. They just saw him sitting there. They all loved him, so they went over there and were glad to be there and glad to be of help. Even though, you know, they had to be exhausted of it by then.
Can I make a confession? I was one of the people who visited his booth that day, and honestly, I was just looking to see if he signed it, and he did. He signed it. He signed it for me, and he said, "Chuck, I have an assignment for you." That's what he put. Pretty good stuff, man.
Well, look, rest in peace, Tom Gerbasi. Thank you for everything on behalf of all of us, on behalf of just combat sports writers in general, because it seems like you have helped every one of us based on how people have been reacting to this over the last few days. I guess we'll be back. Oh, sorry.
There it is.
I was just about to say it.
No, you weren't. No,
if you listen, I paused just as I was about to go.
I think the guitar lick was just ahead of you, though.
They had the New York Rick had his finger just hovering over the button. He was just like,
he doesn't fucking signal.
Oh, this is a good one here.
If this was a boy band, could we call it Irish Spice or Crack Spice?
Ooh.
Crack Spice, I think, might lead people to expect something different than what it would be.
Did you have spice in
same demographic, Ben? It's like
see, you guys had legal marijuana. I'm just wondering, does this There was this like legal synthetic thing that came out over here for a while. Marijuana is still illegal here, and I would never touch it. Ugh.
No.
But there's this thing called spice that was sold in the shops. And everybody was going and getting these bags of spice and smoking it. Turned out it fucking completely destroyed people. I can remember my uncle just absolutely fried smoking. He's like, yeah, no, it's exactly like it. And I was like, I don't think it is, man. You're vibrating as you speak.
John Jones's brother, one of John Jones's brothers who played in the NFL, he like went to a police station and turned himself in because
Chandler.
he was
Chandler
so
Jones.
freaked out from smoking it. And they were just
Spice?
like, and they were like, we don't know what you want us to do here with this, man. Like, it's not illegal.
Yeah, like the spice band. Yeah, one of them. But you know, at least we had a conversation about synthetic marijuana.
Spice bag is what Rick says.
Spice bag.
Spice bag.
Rick has had a spice bag.
Mhm.
You two, if Rick ever starts talking to me again, when the schism has been reunited, maybe we go for another spice bag. You two, you get the fuck over here, and I'll get you the spice bag and a big
Sounds
feed
good.
of Guinness. And look, if we could find a fucking bag of spice, we may smoke a bit of that too. Any more super chats? UFC get T Crawford 30 mil for White House card. That's not enough money for him.
He doesn't walk to his mailbox for that kind of
It
money.
would be more money than any UFC fighter is going to get, and still not nearly enough for him.
Yeah, that's not enough money for him to do that. Like, it's crazy. Like, you need to give him 100 million. Do you know what? He's set. Like, he's not going to do
That
it.
is crazy to think about that, isn't it? Like 30 million wouldn't be enough. You're right,
Not
though.
even get out of fucking bed for it. And it's just this fucking Ilya Topuria stuff. And I know Ilya's driving it, and I know why he's driving it. It's because 30 million's a lot of fucking money if you're a UFC fighter. That's why. And they just aren't getting that. It's just rubbing me up though. And I don't blame Topuria. I get it, but that whole situation is constructed around the fact that these UFC fighters, even if you are literally on top of the world, well, not literally, but Ilya Topuria.
Also, though, I
Sound
mean,
like Dana.
we had this story out this week by John Nash on Ground where about comparing boxing pay and MMA pay, and it was just exhaustive. Very well done. He notes, this is a quote from his story: Conor McGregor was paid approximately 46% less than Canelo Alvarez for 5 pay-per-views from 2014 to 2016, while generating 36% more revenue on the same number of events.
That's
That's
absurd.
Conor McGregor, the biggest star our sport has ever known. Like,
Damn, man.
that tells you something right there. Also, let's please be honest with ourselves. I know we love to speculate about this White House event, what's going to be on it, what it's going to look like and everything. It is September, my dudes. It is September, and the way things are going, we're not even sure there will be a White House by then. Like,
That's true.
We're not like, it might have turned into its own little Versailles by the time summer 2026 rolls around. So like, we really need to pump the brakes on some of that, because the pace at which things have been developing in America suggests who knows what the situation will be by then.
That's Ben's code for Conor McGregor. He thinks it's going to be on that card. I like that.
Honestly,
that's a good
So that's
prediction.
just saying, yeah, that's what you know, Ben.
Chad and I were talking about this on the CME this week, where Michael Chandler was popping back up and being like, me and Conor at the White House. And we were just like, all right, the hope springs eternal for Mikey C. But also,
Mike.
if I'm honest, I could actually see that fight happening at a UFC White House card. Conor McGregor and Michael Chandler. Like, if Conor McGregor could make it through a fight camp and fight anybody, I could see him fighting Michael Chandler, and I could see the powers that be seizing on that one as being like, all right, here's one he might have a realistic chance of winning at this point. Michael Chandler's got this kind of like Captain America-ish thing going on. He's going to see at the top, all this kind of stuff. Like, to the extent that I could see any fight, like, picture it still being a realistic option by then, it's shocking to the extent to which I could see that one.
Look out for Ben's top 5 fights for White House 2026. It's coming out next
We
week.
got to do a live show from the White House lawn, though. You know what I mean? That'd be fun.
Man.
That'd be a lot of fun.
I would fucking pay any amount of money just to cover that event, just to just plug me in. Just like, what the fuck? What is going on? Like, I love it too. Like, it's just, any more of them chatties? Supers? Oh, will Petesy forget today? I didn't, bougie alpaca.
Well,
okay. I didn't seamlessly go into it, but I was if you rewind the tapes, you'll see I was consulting the notepad here. And it does say super chats on that. Next fucking week, I am gonna fucking knock it out of the park. People are gonna be like, I've never seen someone segue to super chats better than that in my life.
I do want to point out that I said it right before we started recording, because shouts out to the big homie Shador66 over there on Twitter, because he hit me up like when I retweeted that, hey, we're going to be going live on the Craic, and he was like, don't forget super chats, PC. And I was like, he is going to forget it. But I told you, that reminded me to tell you right before we started, like, hey, super chats, and you wrote it down. I watched you went, and you wrote it down, and you still.
He wrote something. I don't know what he wrote down.
I wrote 4 things down during the show. One is super chats. Another one is Chael Sonnen talking about Craig Jones. I don't know what that was about. And then, what is Ben's wrestling book set in a different universe? That was the last one I wrote. So if you want to plug that very quickly, please, Ben, because I do want to get a copy.
It was called The Territories, and
I remember that.
You can still find it on the internet. There's a lot of good, fun stories. Chad Dundas has like a novella in there that's really good. I have a short story that's set in the Memphis wrestling territory. The big homie Dan Brooks, who writes for the New York Times, has a hilarious one set in Iowa. A lot of good stuff. I think that there's a volume 2 out, like on the way sometime soon. I don't know. I don't have one in that one. I don't know exactly what the status of that one is, but I know volume 1 was out there. You can look for it. It's got some great art too from the big homie Marco Bucci, who's a very talented artist. But yeah, I recommend it.
I will. I'll check it out. Is that all of the super chatties? Yeah, I think it is. Everybody, thank you so much. Tune in next week.
Take that 15-second pauses. That's it.
Yeah. Tune in next week to see if I do, in fact, remember to segue to super chats. It's been beautiful speaking to you. Oh, thank you. I didn't know what that was. I was like, what is this? A new fucking segment nobody told me about? Chuck, I love you. Ben, I love you. Mysterious Frank, I love you. New York Rick, I love you, even though you won't appear or speak on my show anymore. Thank you so much for joining us. I love you all. See you next week. Mwah.